I'm glad to introduce you, Melissa, today on Agile the Day. So she has over 12 years in the IT industry and 8 years as a project manager role. She also worked as a delivery manager and program manager for several worldwide companies. Her main motivation is to share knowledge with people and to grow better leadership culture. So, Melissa, welcome, and we are happy to see you here as a speaker of today's conference. Give your participation, please. Start sharing the screen and. So, just one comment additional. If the audience will have some question, you can put it in a Q&A session. And also at the same time, you can vote on your favorite question for prioritizing the answer. And also, I will share the link in a publish section. It allowed anyone after the finishing this speech, you can go to this link and write some comments or continue asking the speaker some question. And also you can vote there for this speech. So thank you. And Melissa, please start.
Thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so hi, my name is Melissa Chan. Thank you so much, Ekaterina, for the introduction. I'm here today to talk about leadership and vulnerability. For me, this topic became very important around 1 year, 2 years ago when I read a book. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. Like Ekaterina told me, I'm a project manager. I have worked in the IT industry for over 12 years. I work currently in Ipan, Mexico. So to me, this topic is very important because I think that sometimes we are in a position of being the leader and we don't quite know what is that we suppose we need to do. I mean, of course, leading the team and everything, but sometimes we need to create bigger connections with them. For example, the normal definition of a leader is somebody who's leading a group of people. It's also the state of the position of being a leader. And leader is the common definition is the art of motivating a group of people to act towards achieving a common goal. These definitions that we have are like very dictionary-like, and they don't involve all the range of things that we have to do as leaders, be they a project manager, being a scrum master, being an agile coach, etc. And they leave aside the part of the individual, the connections that we have to make, the relationships that we have to create. So a great definition of leadership is someone who is capable to find the potential in their employees and in the associates that he works with or she works with, and coach them to make them and have the courage to develop this potential, to making them achieve the best they can achieve. But in order to do that, you have to create meaningful relationships. And in order to create meaningful relationships, you have to be able to be vulnerable. And you have to be able to put yourself on the line. You have to be able to be honest. You have to be able to stay curious. At the end of the day, it makes a lot of people nervous. All those things make the people nervous. Today, I was actually, prior to coming to this, I was quite nervous to give this speech. But at the end, I think, okay, what can I do to stop being so nervous? And one of the major things that you can do also to be able to be open and be vulnerable is to remind yourself that you are working with people. At the end of the day, we are all people. We all have this range of emotions. We have all these needs. We have all these feelings and all these things that are happening to us. And if we assume that, if we tap into them, recognize them, and learn from them, then we can find our potential in everything that we can do. There was this presentation is based in one of the books that I read a long time ago that I really like, that is by Brené Brown, called Dare to Lead. In this study, she is a sociologist, and she does a lot of investigations regarding these precise feelings and qualities that we have, like shame and resilience and uh, vulnerability and openness. And in this study that she did, she asked a lot of people, CEOs, CFOs, FAOs, and everything, what do they think a great leader have in common? And while some of the things that appear were like, I don't know, analytics and good communication and business acumen and all those things that we believe they have to do, there was no consensus on everything that a leader should do. Nonetheless, there was a consensus on all the things that are hindering the the company or the culture or the path of leadership. And this study was based in, they did it for almost 10 years. And what they found is that leaders were more easily to pinpoint the things that can go wrong in a leadership than the things that could go right. So at the end, that's why this part that we're going to discuss, because what stands in the way becomes the way. These are all the things that we know they are wrong in being leadership, but we still do it. We still sometimes as leaders don't realize it and go with the flow and do it in automatically, and we do all these things. One of them, for example, is we avoid the tough conversations, including giving honest and productive feedback, because we are afraid. We are afraid that perhaps they will get mad. They will not be able to have the proper feedback or stand it, and they will get mad to us, or they will react in a bad way, or things like that. And the consequence is that we have a lack of clarity. The trust is diminished. What we want to avoid, we end up doing. We end up diminishing the trust. We end up having less engaged relationship with the associates we work with, and we increase the problematic behavior, because if we are afraid to give the feedback that we need, then all of those things can affect us. Another of the things that we have that stands in the way is, instead of working proactively and addressing the fears and the feelings when there's change and upheaval in our projects, we spend a lot of time managing the problematic behaviors. If we rather sit down with the people and talk about the fears and the feelings and get to the bottom of them and understand where they're coming from and why they are feeling those feelings and where their fears coming from, and try to create an action plan to resolve it, then we will spend a lot of time managing the behavior that is creating the problem. If we don't have the connection and empathy with associates that we work on, then we don't have trust. And we will see a little later on, as a spoiler, a lot of people think that being vulnerable and courageous and speaking from the truth requires trust. Like, first I need to trust, then I have to be able to be open. But the thing is, to gain the trust, you have to be first vulnerable. So we need to create that trust. This also, right now, every company is trying to drive for innovation and work in innovation, talk about innovation. But not a lot of people are taking smart risks or creating bold ideas that promote this innovation. And we will see a little later that one of the reasons is if we foster a culture in our teams, in our companies, or something like that, where these bold ideas, these innovation ideas can be met up with shame or name calling or diminishing of these ideas just for the sake of it, all of this will hinder the innovation, and people will be a lot more resilient and a lot more I don't know how is the word, but they will not convey these innovation ideas or these bold ideas or these great ideas that they have because they will be afraid that people will mock them. We all get stuck and we all have setbacks and disappointments. The project didn't go right. We failed to deliver something, etc. But um, if we prefer to spend a lot of time and energy trying to fix the customers, fix everything, and not the root cause and not whatever is happening in our team, that will make the people question their contribution and their value. And in this case, it's very hard to pass the setback and pass the disappointment and the failure, and you will get stuck into that because you are not trying to find what is it that uh, the team did that can help us. Sometimes as a leaders, we tend to shame and blame the people that work with us, and we don't have enough accountability and learning. Because if we are connected with the team, we lead bravely, then we are able to provide better feedback, and in that case, take accountability also as ourselves as a leader, and then we can do better. One of the things about that happens when we are not being vulnerable and we are not being courageous and we are having all these fears about connecting with the people that we have is that in the companies where cultureness, diversity, and inclusivity are coming into play, then we shy ourselves from those conversations because we have the fear that we may be wrong or say something wrong or acting all wrong. But the thing is, by not showing to this conversation, even if we are saying something wrong or being fear or everything is completely wrong with us, we need to show up because that's important and that makes us vulnerable and that makes us a better person. We need to move from solutions that are a quick patch, a quick fix to something that is happening, and stay into the problem identification and the root cause, and that way we can solve the problems. Like I mentioned, these are all the things that a lot of leaders say that they were wrong with leadership, but still what stands in the way was becoming the way. We sometimes have the sin of doing all of these things together. The organizational values are aspire in terms of aspirations and not actual behaviors. And the behaviors of these values that we have, like here in EPAM, for example, which is striving for excellence and respect for the individual, we should mark them as behavioral things that can be taught, that can be measured, that can be evaluated, and we should provide honest and complete feedback on those. The perfectionism and the fear are keeping people from learning and growing because we try to be perfect. We try to do everything at the same time. And we are in fear that people will believe. Right now, it's very common that a lot of people talk about having the imposter syndrome, like they're not supposed to be there, that it was just luck, that they are not qualified to do that. And that is keeping people from growing and from learning. And we should remove all of these things. We should remove them to be able to be vulnerable, to show ourselves there. I'm going to tell you a little bit. This is a quote that the author of the book that I read, Brené Brown, in Dare to Lead, and another book that I've heard read greatly. I think it's an amazing quote because it comes from Theodore Roosevelt, and it says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the mind who points out how the strong man stumbles or whether the doer of the deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because we are humans, we're going to fail all the time. But there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends themselves in the worldly causes, And this quote's what it says, like, if you fail, at least fail greatly. And to fail greatly, you have to be in the arena. And I think a leader doesn't necessarily mean that you are put in a position of leadership. You can be anywhere. A leader is somebody who's able to find the potential of all the people that they surround them. So you don't need to be in a position of a leadership. You can be a team member and still be the leader. So one of those things that I want to convey with this conversation is that by being vulnerable, by being somebody who is there to fail and to try and fail greatly, you can become a leader that has vulnerability and better connections with the people that you work with. Leadership is about vulnerability, is how we show up in situations where we have no control over, where we know there is risk involved. And vulnerability stands for I have no control over the outcome. I don't know what is going to happen, but still I show up. Still I try to work on that. So to be courageous and to be a great leader and a daring leader, you have to be very vulnerable, meaning showing up when you don't know the outcome, when you cannot predict the outcome. You have to have the tough conversation, which is stronghold with vulnerability, is living in your values, know yourself, is braving the trust, because sometimes it's really hard to trust to people, and learning to rise from the mistakes that you make, because you are going to make mistakes. It's also very important for the value part and for the growing part and for the connection that you will create with the individuals, your self-awareness about your values, about who you are, what you want to achieve, and the self-love. Self-love will allow you to put boundaries. Sometimes, as hard as you try, you will not be able to connect with another people. And the self-love is what will allow you to put boundaries and say, this is not my place. Perhaps I can be moved to another team. Perhaps I can be with other people. We are all different, so sometimes we will not be able to connect as well as we want to do. But this is very important, because who we are is how we live. And if you know yourself, you will be able to grow and to be courageous and to be vulnerable as a leader. Other thing that is required for leadership is courage, because courage is contagious. So great leaders must care and be connected to the people they lead. And you cannot fake it. If you're trying to fake the connection, if you're trying to be this leader who pretends to care and pretends to listen and pretends to say things, people will find out and they will be very mad. So it cannot be fake. You need to truly care about the connection with the people that you lead. Vulnerability is the emotion we experience during times of uncertainty and emotional changes, but it's the birthplace of love, of belonging, which is one of the major needs as the humans we have, of joy, of the courage to show up, of the empathy that we must have to other people, accountability to recognize your own mistakes and be responsible for your own actions, and to be authentic and be your true self and not the pretend one. If we are brave enough, often enough, like I say, we will fail. Because daring to become a great leader is not saying, well, I will risk failure. Daring is saying, I know I will fail, but I'm still all in. I think this is very important. Not a lot of us, and to me, it has also been very hard to say, okay, this is gonna fail, but still I'm there. I'm all in. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna be my best. It's not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. There are certain myths of vulnerability that I would like to discuss with you, because I would like to be able to explain perfectly well what vulnerability is so that we can bring it to our workplaces. The first myth is that it's weakness. There's a lot of cultures that grow up thinking that if you are vulnerable, if you show your fears or if you show your failures, then you're weak. Then you shouldn't be in a position of leadership. And that's simply not true. Vulnerability it takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable. It's completely the opposite. In order to become a better person, you have to be vulnerable. All those situations and actions that shape you require vulnerability. So vulnerability is not weakness at all. Vulnerability is the strongest you can be. A lot of people also say, I don't do vulnerability. I cannot do that. But everybody is vulnerable at some point in life because we are humans. We cannot be perfect all the time. We cannot pretend we don't need other people. We don't need connection. We don't need to be courageous. We do need it. So everybody does vulnerability at one point or the other. The thing is, we want to bring it to the workplace. We want to bring all those feelings to the workplace and create better teams and create teams that are motivated and that trust each other. A lot of people also say, I can do it alone. I won't be able to do it alone. If I'm vulnerable and I trust my teams, they have to trust me back. It doesn't work like that. It's not pretty quid pro quo. You have to first show yourself, and these people will try to emulate you because that's what it is. Courage is contagious. So it will allow them to come change the culture of the team or the company. A lot of people also, especially here in the IT or in the engineering industries, they believe that you can engineer the uncertainty and the discomfort. And if you take those parts out, like if you make a risk mitigation plan, or if you have action A, B, C, D, and you can avoid the discomfort, and then taking those out, then you can be vulnerable. But you can't. It's very sad, but to be vulnerable is to be uncertain of the outcome, is to be somebody who doesn't know the results. You are discomfort because sometimes the feedback is going to hit you back, and they're going to tell you all the things that you as a person are doing wrong and that you need to improve. And of course, it makes us very insecure that people are telling us what we should do, or how they perceive our fault. But to be able to pass that will make us better leaders. Like I said before, a lot of people think that first you have to trust, then you can become vulnerable. But it's the opposite. First, you need to be vulnerable to earn real trust. If you don't show up, doesn't matter the result. If you don't say, hey, I'm still in, you will never gain the trust you need. So first be vulnerable and courageous, and then the trust will come naturally. Vulnerability is disclosure. A lot of people believe that, oh, I got the concept. Vulnerability is telling everything that is going in my mind and happening in my head, and I will say it. And if I don't know what to do, I will tell my entire team, I don't have an idea of what to do. But that's also wrong, because you are in a position where the people tend to look up to you. So if you go around saying, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm doing, you will create fear and uncertainty and a lot of questions in your team. Vulnerability is being able to sit down with your team and talk about all the fears that you have, all the tough conversations that should be having, get to the root causes, and you don't have to tell everything to everybody. One of the ideas that you can do is have your square of trust. And in this square, you will put all the names in a little piece of square. You will put all the names of the people who know you in the workplace, not personally, but professionally, and that you can do tough conversations, and they will be mirrors, and they will tell you all the things that you can improve on, and that you trust them, so that in this way the feedback will be important. So how do we embrace vulnerability? If it's not telling everything everybody, if first we need to be vulnerable and then we have to be trustful, then how do we embrace it? Well, first we need to recognize our emotions, our core emotions. A lot of people have troubles identifying even the way they are feeling. They don't know if they are frustrated or mad. They don't know if they are disappointed or sad. So it's very important that we know ourselves and understand our core emotions and the actions that we have in those core emotions. We need to understand also that empathy is not the same as sympathy. Empathy is being able to put yourself in other person's shoes and how they will feel if the situation will happen to them. But you also need to understand that their feelings are their feelings and there's nothing that you can control. So you can be vulnerable and express your feelings and then respect the individual. And you can try to put yourself in their shoes and says, okay, in your shoes, I will be feeling this, but how are you feeling? Versus sympathy. Sympathy is not empathy. Sympathy is saying like, yeah, I agree with you. Oh, yes, it's okay. But you are not actually trying to understand the person. Another thing is we have to embrace our shame. As humans, we commit a lot of mistakes in the workplace. We sometimes show unprepared to meetings or things like that. And if somebody's there to point it out, it will make us feel shame. Like, for example, I don't come from a technical background. I come from a different background, and my career was in psychology. And I have worked for a lot of years in the IT industry, but it has cost me a lot. And sometimes at the beginning of my career, I didn't understand quite well the slang from the developers. And I will go to the Java developers or the .NET developers, and I ask them, hey, what do you mean when you say that? Or what? How does it work? Like, for example, a JavaScript or something like that. Um, all of the people that I ever asked were very gracious, and they will always tell me, and I will always learn more. But I have to pass my shame of asking, of saying like, "Oh, I'm the leader, and how will it look, or will I lose face if I go and ask this very basic and simple question?" It took a lot to overcome that shame and that fears, and be able to go and connect to people and say, "Hey, I don't know this, and can you tell me?" And 90% of the time, the people are very gracious, and they will always be able to teach you and to show you and to provide you feedback. So to learn our values, we need to see what is important to us. One of the things that is very important about values is that they can change over time. Principles, they never move, but values, they can change over time because as human beings, we evolve and we grow. And what something that was important to me a month ago is not important anymore. But as such, we also need to evolve and manage those values. Like, for example, for me 2 months ago, the value most important in the world perhaps was, I don't know, being on time and start meetings completely on the top of the hour. And perhaps over time, I realized that some of my team members will become 1 minute, 2 minutes late, and we can have a 5 minutes gap, and so that people can connect and things like that. Especially now that we're working from home, so strict punctuality is no longer a value of mine. And then I adapt, and then I move those values. But it's very important that you know where you stand for. We present from a vulnerability state is that don't try to control the outcome, because people hate when you try to control how they feel, how they should act. So you need to be present from a vulnerability state. You need to be present from, I can control the outcome, it's a risk, but I will show up, I will be open, I will be curious, I will be alive, I will pay attention, I will do active listening, and I will also share from myself. And I don't know if there's any questions that you can tell me. If you have more extra material, I can put two links here. There's some downloads so that you can work on finding your core values, and a lot of exercises that you can use with your teams. You can download it from there. And also, I can highly recommend the TED Talk from Brené Brown about the power of vulnerability. I think it's a heart-shaping and eye-changing talk. And I don't know if there's any more questions.
First of all, Melissa, thank you very much for your super talk. It was super interesting, and I hope it's super useful. And we have one question from the audience right now. Just please be free to ask the questions right now, and we have more time to communicate. And what is the name of the book the talk is based?
It's called Dare to Lead from Brené Brown.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, if it's near you, it will be cool that you show Dare to Lead, Brené Brown. Okay. Maybe share another books that you like and also would like to share with the guys to use or read.
Yeah, well, Brené Brown has specialized for over 20 years on talks about vulnerability. And he has about 5 books. Daring Greatly is another great book of hers. You can also look for Braving the Wilderness. And she has another one. The first one that she published is called The Gift of Imperfections. So it's about being imperfect because we're humans. So we're gonna err, and there are a lot of misconceptions about being perfect. And it's time we debunk that and become better at being humans and not perfect.
Okay, I got it. We had the audience, and the audience is pretty shy. If you will shy during some minutes, we will continue the session, but also Ekaterina, our moderator, pulled about the link to communityz.com, link to your talk. Please, guys, vote for the session, and also in the comments you can provide any questions you would like to be answered by Melissa maybe further if you're not ready right now. Okay, just one more question. How to start and establish great leadership with new teams. You're muted, Melissa, please be unmuted.
Yes, I think one of the greatest things that you can do with a new team is, like I said, show up from a place of vulnerability. Show up from a place where perhaps the team is already created and you are the new one. So come meet your team from a place where you can say, okay, I'm here to learn. I'm here to understand you guys. I'm here to be open and have the conversations that you need to have, and not coming from a place of saying, I'm the leader and you will do whatever I say you need to do. So instead of that, be open to meet the team. Perhaps they have already their own dynamics and they can add you to the team. If you are creating the team from scratch and you are going to be the leader and if this is all new, then perhaps you should talk to them and introduce yourself and create like some icebreakers and some activities that you can do so that you can know each other and do it in a fun way.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question. Yes, the audience, I say that coming and going, we're busy. It's working time in some parts. And the question is, sorry if I missed this part, but could you name some like a list of main skills an agile leader?
I think one of the major skills that you have to, as a agile leader, is to have an open communication with your team, is to create enough trust with the team so that the retrospectives, for example, are very rich. And when you ask them what we have done better, they actually dig deep into the root causes. That will create a better way of moving forward. If the people are ashamed or are in fear of truly saying all these things that could go wrong or that they did, then perhaps you need to build more trust with some exercises and sit down and have all the conversations. So I would say communication, trust, and I think vulnerability. I think it's very important to be vulnerable and show up and be there and try to have a culture that fosters innovation and openness between the team.
Okay, thank you very much. I agree with you that communication, I think in every sphere, in every work, in every role is super important. One more question. How do we enable leaders to step outside of roles which limit their ability to be vulnerable? Hero's journey, a leader taking up role of knowing.
Can you please repeat the question? I didn't understand quite well.
Okay. How do we enable leaders to step outside of roles which limit their ability to be vulnerable?
If you are a leader, you have to be the example of the vulnerability. You have to be the vulnerable one and start. Like I mentioned, courage is contagious. So as a leader, you can be vulnerable. If you're a team member, for example, the fact that you can be vulnerable maybe will inspire the leader to become a vulnerable person. What I mentioned is vulnerability is not about just disclosing everything that is happening in your head. It's showing there, having the tough conversations, be willing to receive and give feedback, honest feedback. So I think it's if you are the leader, it's important that you start doing the vulnerability, the having the feedbacks, the tough talks, the sitting down. Also, it's very important that you as a leader know yourself. You need to know where your weaknesses are. You need to know where your values are. You need to be able to show up in authenticity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think that we have answered all the questions. Thanks audience for your questions and your attention. I think that we can wrap up and wish all of you have a good day. Enjoy our sessions. Agility's day is still. I will have more talks and workshops. Just be free to join the sessions. And guys, have a good day. Melissa, thank you very much for joining. It was super interesting for everybody of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.